More than 200 years ago, our country was founded on the principles of freedom. Well, now more than ever, our freedom is something to be appreciated and celebrated. Well, you can show your pride by making a 13-star wall hanging. I proudly call this one the 13 Colonies quilt. It's in patriotic red, and classic white. Well, the pattern is called the Sawtooth Star. Now, there's 5 rows of 6-inch stars, and they alternate with 6-inch solid squares. And the quilting is beautiful. My cousin Carol Ann did it. She did motifs in both the red star and the solid square. And from the back side, you can see how she placed the red bobbin thread in for her quilting. It's just gorgeous. Well, the inspiration for the name Sawtooth came from admiration for the carpenter and his saw in colonial times. Well, this one is just so striking with patriotic red, white, and blue stars. And then it has a mitered border and the same fabrics, 13 stars as well. Just darling. Well, Ruth Finley, who is the author of Old Patchwork Quilts, wrote this book in 1929, and she referred to this quilt as the Rising Star. It's just wonderful. It has a 12-inch star with a 6-inch star inside, and inside of that a 3.5-inch square. And my cousin quilted this motif. It looks like firecracker exploding right out of the center of that star. Well, the mail order company called Ladies Art Company from St. Louis, Missouri, called this pattern Stars and Squares. Looks appropriate, huh? Well, if you like the scrappy look, I made 6-inch stars with scrappy points of barn red and country blue. And then I just love those scrappy geese flying right through the center of the stars. Just so fun. Well, today I'm going to show you how to make 6-inch and 12-inch stars. And you know, just by changing the fabrics and the value placement and the settings, the possibilities are endless. So join me in this spirited celebration of stars. Celebrate Americana with this Stars and Bars mantle cover. Well, this one has 6 stars across and matching geese, but you can make yours any size you need. Maybe you just need to have 4 stars, be a little bit shorter. And I'm also going to show you the eagle with the stars on the top, but not until you know all of the techniques for the star. You know that Sawtooth Star is my favorite star, and I want to make it yours as well. Well, there's such variety that you can do with this simple star. This one is just all dark with one background, easiest to do. Or you can make a change and add a 3.5-inch square in the center of a different fabric. That looks pretty. How about changing the corners? These are 2-inch corner squares, an entirely different look. And this one's probably my favorite. I did some scrappy points. I have the blue and the red alternating the whole way around that dark center. If you prefer, you could even have a light star on a dark background. Just such versatility. Well, you know the patch is sometimes referred to as the flying geese patch or the star point patch, and I'll use them interchangeably. The patch actually is 1.5 inches tall, and the width of the patch, or the flying geese patch, is always twice the height, so it's 3 inches. Well, just with 2 different sizes of squares, I want to show you how to make 4 perfect geese. Well, you start with the width, and in this case it's 3 inches, and to that width you add 1.5 inches. The answer is 4.5, and so that 4.5-inch measurement is the size of your smallest square. Add another 1.5 inches. Oh, easy answer, 6 inches. The 6 inches is the size for the larger square. Well, I have them laid out, and I'll show you what you actually get in the end. If you start out with this one right here, with the 4.5 inch and a 6, you end up with a light star point, you would use a light center. And I always think of it as this way. When you look at the star point, this is just one or smaller. So you use the smaller square. The points are 2, so you use the larger square. See if you can remember that, and that'll help you out. Now for this one right here, we can go ahead and get 4 points, 4 dark points that are all the same. The 4.5 inch and the 6. Now you start out, and I like to put my squares right on the diagonal line. Center the smaller one, right sides together, and the larger one. And when you have it on that diagonal line, you could take a look, see how you're doing. Then take a 6 by 24 or 6 by 12 ruler and line it up so that it goes corner to corner. And whenever your ruler touches all 4 points, then you know that you have it lined up perfectly. So just draw a line right through there. Use a permanent marking pen, just a light pencil, whatever you need so that you can see your marks. Now it's a 1/4 inch seam. You could pin those 2 sides if you'd like, or sometimes I just leave them loose. And I have this bar on my foot that whenever I place that bar on the line, my stitching is 1/4 inch away. You just sew down one side of it. Now if you were doing many of them, you would just go ahead and trail them right behind, and then take and turn around and drop your foot so that your stitching is on the second side. You want your stitching to be a 1/2 inch apart. And then once that stitching is done, we are well on our way. Okay, measure your stitching, make sure it's a 1/2 inch. Take your ruler and cut it in half right down through the middle on the line. Now the next step is pressing, and this is a little tricky. You always think about size. I have 2 different sizes of triangles here. I have the small one and the large one. You always place these with the largest triangle on the top. Doesn't matter about color, it matters about size. So put this largest on the top, set the seam, and then just press right in there. Set the second one, press in. You have these little funny edges on the sides. Pretty incredible looking. You go, oh my gosh, at this point, surely this is not right. Now, if I would take these 2 for 4 points the same, you take them and flip them right sides together, matching opposite colors. I'm putting the light against the dark against the light. No need to line up that seam, but you do line up the outside edges. Well, if I did it this way, I would end up with 4 points all the same, but want to have some fun with this wall hanging. So I'm just going to introduce a red, a second color. Set that aside, and I can make another set of red and blue. So now take these, place alternate colors together, still the light against the dark, like this, and then once you have them placed together, just draw one other diagonal line. Get them lined up. And usually I start right in the middle, go out one way, start in the middle, and go out the other way. And then once again, just sew right down those diagonal lines. Okay, drop this right on there. Hold on to your threads. Now this part right here, you want to be very careful that your seam does not flip. And so to keep it from flipping, I hold the stiletto on one side and my finger on the other. And there's a seam actually underneath that's just going to sew right through there nice and flat. Okay, turn it around and then do exactly the same thing. Hold those seams flat here and this one right here, because this will end up being your points on your star points or your geese, and you really want to have it nice and crisp. So then take it, and once again, cut it in half right down through the middle on the diagonal line. And then when you open it up, this is what you have. Now it looks a little strange, but how about, let's turn it like this. And then you can see that you've got a star point here, one on the other side, and then 2 more again. Now, when you're doing this patch, you want the seams to lay flat away from this part, or we often call it the geese. So to do that, I'm just going to take it and fold it right in half, and then with my scissors, just clip right down to the stitching. Now, you do need to do some pressing at this step. This time I press it from the right side, and I go right into the geese on the right side on one half. Just turn it around and go into the geese on the other half. And then turn it, flip, make sure the seams are laying flat on the back side. Perfect. Well, now you can go ahead and square it up just using your regular ruler. You have a 1/4 inch line in your ruler. You want to make sure you allow for that seam. So I'm just going to line up my patch, my ruler on that patch, cut it right in half, got that 1/4 inch there, and now you can turn it and you can trim it up to 2 inches by 3.5 inches. Just put 1 1/4 right in the top center like so. Trim it on one side, turn it around, and trim this up. I'm going to put 3.5 here, 3.5 here, right here along here. So trim the side and across. Well, that makes a perfect patch. But I do also have a flying geese ruler that makes squaring up this patch very easy. Now here are the lines right here. It says 1 1/2 by 3. So if you just place it right on the stitching, put the lines on the stitching, cut across the top and down the side. Just take this part, get rid of it. Turn the patch, but don't turn the ruler. And then this time, line up the diagonal line on the one seam. Get your corner right up here. Ooh, it's looking good. Hold your hand flat so that you don't get carpal tunnel. Go across the top, down the side, and that is a perfect patch. Well, let me get all of my other patches squared up, and I'll show you how to make the star. In this land where we can reach for the stars, we are nearly there. But when you square up the scrappy points, if you have just one set, you end up with 2 different mirror image pieces. There's 2 in this stack, 2 in this stack. And so if they're mirror image, you just take this one, put it on the opposite side, take this one and put it on the opposite side of center. So you actually create this band of blue in this example, and a band of red going through. So that's one way you can do your star. Or if you make 2 different sets of the same scrappy points, you actually end up with mirror image points. And you can see those in these 2 stars. Well, I want to take this one and show you how to sew it all together. Oh, I tell you, this is my favorite star. So I want you to get good seams on it. Okay, I always sew vertical rows from top to bottom. And so you take the middle row and always flip it over to the right. And we're just going to sew continuously straight down those 3 pieces. So let me just move it over here. This is a great time for getting that stiletto to line up those pieces. Just match up at the top, hold on to those threads, and just power right through. Now actually with this top, this center square on the top, you can't see what that seam is doing underneath. So it's wise to just put your stiletto on there as you go across. And then one more time, get this lined up right behind. Hold this seam down flat. It's wise to check at this time because it's so much easier to unsew. So open it up, make sure they're all chained together in perfect order, and then just take the next 3 pieces and same thing, flip them right sides together and go right down along there. And now that you see the back side of this patch, you can see you want to go right through that seam. Looks good. Well, I've been going around quilting a day and asking them what it means to be an American. And the underlying answer is always freedom. They always say freedom. Freedom to make your own choices. Sue said, I can make my own choice to get up in the morning or go to work or not. And you know she always does come to work. I asked Teresa, and Teresa said, well, it's different here in America than in the country that I grew up in. She said, you have the freedom to become whatever you want to be. You can just make amazing things with yourself. Okay, now let me just check this. Let's open it up, make sure it's good. Let's see, perfect like that. Now you take this piece and fold it over, and when you do the flying geese patch or the star points, you always want to push them away from the patch. It'll be away from it here and underneath, also away from it, so that those seams actually just lock together. So give it a good squeeze and then just go straight down the other way. And other people said, well, it's the freedom of how I choose to raise my family, live with my loved ones. That is a really good one. And they always think about loyalty. Good match, looking good. So then on the next side, the same thing, fold it over and do exactly the same thing. Seams always away from the patches, from the flying geese. Make sure you hold that seam flat. And you're actually setting it up for pressing in the next step. You can always find Americans with faith, loyalty, all of those good things. All right, place it right here. Set the seams with those rows on top, and then just open it up and press right into the seam. On both sides, press into the seam. It is perfect. So when you look at it at the back, then those pieces lay really flat with that center seam going away from the outside. Well, Sue went ahead and took this small patch, and she added those large star points to it. Oh, they're so easy to do, because right here I have that same chart. It's the same type of math. We want to finish up with a patch that is 3 inches by 6 inches. So you start with the 6 at 1.5 inches. The small square is going to be 7.5. Add another 1.5 inches. The large square will be 9. And so then this is what it looks like. Here we've got the small square in the middle, and it'll create this light geese right here, dark star points. That's what you get there. And then if you alternate the colors, the small square, dark, then you have a dark geese patch right here. Well, take a look at Sue's quilt, because she took that small square in the very center, added the patches around the outside edge, and sewed them into one big 12.5-inch star. Then she set those stars together with lattice in between. Beautiful reproduction, Civil War fabrics, 1860s to 1880s. And she framed it with that wonderful striped border, blue striped border, with 9 patches in the corner. Just so pretty. Well, so we can take this patch and just lay it out. We'll see how to do it. These patches should be exactly the same as that small star right there. And if you've used a perfect 1/4 inch seam allowance, that's exactly what yours should be. Okay, and these are going to go around the edges. And then in the corners, you have 3.5-inch squares. This is vibrant. This is really stand up and shout. And then when you sew this one together, it goes exactly the same way. Vertical rows first, going down both. And then when you go across the other way, you press those seams away from the flying geese patch. Well, go and work on your stars, and I'm going to show you how to set several stars together. When we stand united, all things are possible, and it's possible. We're just about ready to finish this 4-star table runner. Well, I cut some lattice pieces. They are 3.5 inches by 6.5 inches, the size of this little finished star. I have a stack of the 3 stars right here, and I just wanted to show you how to flip the star right sides together onto the lattice and assembly line sew. I'm going to give you some tips so that you can use them on all of your stars with borders. Okay, so just push this flat right here, and then whenever you assembly line sew, you just keep on pushing one right after the other. Let's see if we can just get this one going right through there too. I really like it when I have the back of the star showing, because I can see how I'm supposed to do these seams. So I have really crisp, perky points. I really like that. I'm just going to take these 2 stars right here, because this is typical of how you would continuously sew this. You always put your border on the top. Set your seam with the border on the top. Then when you lift and press into it, that seam is right behind the border or the lattice. So let me just lay these out. Take a look. This is really bright. This one will just decorate the table, make it look so good. Okay, you're going to do star, lattice, and just continue. Star, lattice, and I have one more star and lattice in between. So that's the whole center of the quilt. And then a little 2-inch light border is going on the sides of this. Once again, you flip it right sides together, set the seam with the border on the top, and then open and press it into it. Now, there are 22 geese in each one of these rows, 2 rows of 22 geese. And it's easy to figure out the math because 4 of the geese should equal to 1 of the stars. And then in between for the lattice, 2 of the geese for 1 of the lattice. So you can just go ahead and do your own. Oh my gosh, you can make it as long as you want. Well, when you're sewing geese, you always take and make 2 equal stacks pointing away from you. And just take the one piece, flip it over, right sides together, and this is the same thing. Then you can see where you're stitching, so you get really crisp points right up on the top. But you assembly line sew, keep them lined up like so, one after the other. Actually, you might want to make sure you have red and blue alternating, or whatever 2 colors, because I see that I'm putting 2 blues together. Oh my goodness. So after you go through all 2 piles, then go back, clip them apart. You have pairs, open them up, make sure your points are nice and crisp, and like this. Actually, that looks really pretty. And once those are sewn into one long chain, then you just take your iron and go right into that point towards the end of the strip. And those will go right on the sides. And then you can just go ahead and finish this with a border. Well, I'm working on this quilt, laying it out on the design wall on point. Lay out 16 stars on point in rows. It's 4 stars across and 4 stars down. And remember to alternate between the red and the blue centers in the stars. Next, lay out 6.5-inch squares, also alternating between the reds and the blues. I used 5 blues and 4 reds. Then cut 3 10-inch squares on both diagonals. I used 2 reds and 1 blue, and then lay them out around the sides of the quilt. Next, cut 2 5.5-inch blue squares in half on one diagonal and lay them in each of the 4 corners. Sew those diagonal rows together, and all I need to do to finish up is add an off-white and beige border. Now, I love stars set on point, but if you'd like something simpler, then try the straight set, as in the 13 Colonies quilt. Just take your 13 stars and lay them out with 3 across in the top row. Leave space for 2 solid squares, and then it alternates. 2 stars, 3 stars, 2, and 3. And then fill in with those 12 solid squares. And all you need to do is just flip that second row right sides together to the first, sew those vertical rows together, and when you go back across the other way, it's just so simple, press those seams away from the star. Now, another favorite, I just love it when you have the light star with the dark sky. Set those together in straight rows again, and you will have beautiful stars in the midnight sky. You know, these stars are forever. Add some star-spangled fun to your day with these scrappy quilts. Now, they're made exactly the same way with the same number of stars and the same number of geese, but it's just the difference in the size of the star points. Now, on this one, I've made 6-inch finished size stars. These are 1.5-inch by 3-inch geese, and then I added 3.5-inch by 6.5-inch lattice in between each one of the stars. There's 12 stars, 3 rows with 4 stars in each row, and then the geese. Oh my gosh, 26 geese just flying right along there. 2 different rows of them. Well, this one could be a lap robe, but this one right here would be great for a bed. These are 3-inch by 6-inch finished size star points. The same number of stars, there's 12 stars in here, and the same number of geese in each row. Well, my cousin Carol Ann quilted this one. I just love those loop-de-loops, and there's stars, quilted throughout. You can just see that beautiful quilting on the back. Well, may you display your red, white, and blue quilts year-round and make every day Independence Day.